The Evil Within is a bit of an oddity when it comes to how I truly feel about it. On one hand, it was my introduction to the survival horror genre of video games. It was tense, atmospheric, and above all else, viscerally horrifying. On the other hand, it was at times one of the most miserable gaming experiences I ever had. The controls were clunky and sometimes just outright unresponsive. Weapons that were very clearly aimed at specific targets missed completely, and some of the hitboxes of certain enemies were horrendously designed. Despite all of it, The Evil Within became my favorite survival horror game to date, and made me curious to see if I could complete it in its entirety. One achievement in particular made me really apprehensive about whether or not that goal was possible. That achievement, of course, being the infamous "You asked for it." What did I, as the player, hypothetically ask for? Completing the game on its most difficult setting, Akumu mode. So, what exactly makes Akumu's difficulty so challenging? Well, a lot. For starters, Akumu mode can only be accessed after completing the main campaign once all the way through, and with a story length of about 20 hours, that's usually enough for most players. Add on the fact that Akumu can only be started in a completely new save, eliminating all the bonus rewards and weapons unlocked in previous playthroughs. That also means that Sebastian will be reverted back to his base stats, which doesn't make things any easier. He has lower health, sprints for a whopping 3 seconds before stopping to take a breather, and has the punching power of Deadpool's amputated torso. And because that wasn't nearly challenging enough, enemies were everywhere and incredibly more perceptive. Some enemy spawn points were altered, completely changing my playstyle compared to previous runs. Traps and obstacles were way more plentiful, hidden in every dark corner, just out of sight. Resources were practically non-existent, meaning I had to play way more strategically in order to pull this off. The cherry on top, any and all damage, regardless of its source, would kill Sebastian in a single hit. Was I way over my head with taking on this challenge? Absolutely. Was it worth it? Probably not. Regardless, I was going to complete my first survival horror game, even if it meant going through hell and back over and over again, or at least until I got my achievement. Rather than trying to summarize the convoluted mess of a story in The Evil Within, all you really need to know is that Detective Sebastian Castellanos unintentionally entered the mind of a psychopath while investigating multiple homicides at Beacon Mental Hospital. That much is obvious, as the first enemy I encountered was the Sadist, a large brute with a penchant for butchering his victims. Not wanting to end up like the guy on his table, I grabbed a conveniently placed escape knife, cut myself free, and made a beeline for the not-so-hidden keys hanging above the Sadist's table. After an extended chase sequence and a perfectly placed locker, it was now time to sneak past the Sadist and make a legitimate break for it. Apparently, I wasn't sneaky enough because I got spotted right away, and well, this happened. With the consequences of failure so fresh in my mind, I decided to play the waiting game. Lord and behold, it actually worked. Well, it worked until the elevator chase. For a second I thought I was soft-locked because he was always right behind me after I fumbled over the gurney. There was nothing I could do about that because it was a scripted chase sequence. After 3 more failed attempts, and a slightly bruised ego, I finally got past the Sadist and rode the elevator to the end of the chapter. This gave me a horrible sense of anxiety of what was to come, but nevertheless, I was stupidly determined. Chapter 2 immediately picked up after the aftermath of Chapter 1, and I was introduced to the first most common enemy type in the game, the Haunted. After quickly taking down the first of many Haunted, I was then bombarded by 5 different tutorials further explaining how to survive in The Evil Within. After demonstrating that I seemed to know what I was doing, I was then rewarded with the Safe Room, a haven outside of all the typical twisted locales headed by an emotionally dead nurse named Tatiana, who was surprisingly helpful. She not only gave me access to the game's save point and the upgrade chair, which would increase my character and weapon stats, as well as the morgue lockers, which would contain various goodies that would further increase my chances of survival. With a place to respawn in the wake of my inevitable death, or series of deaths, I continued onward into a horde of the Haunted. All things considered, I dealt with the first couple of enemies pretty well. When I hit my intended targets, that was.
What? What the fuck?
The rest of the horde was slightly more challenging. For one thing, the Haunted were everywhere, and my semi-decent spooking skills didn't exactly always pay off. If it wasn't my stealth kills that got me into trouble, then it was my own stupidity. Pro tip, if you know there's a group of the Haunted coming, don't try to take them on when you can die in one hit. All joking aside though, I was able to clear the small village with little to no trouble, and learned the basics pretty well. After slinking past yet another horde, another chapter was complete. I was feeling really good at this point in time. Little did I know how much Chapter 3 was going to test my commitment to completing the Akumu challenge. Chapter 3 began with the proper introduction of Marcelo Jimenez, a cowardly doctor who made me take on the difficult task of getting the gate on the other side of a haunted-infested town open while he acted as a distraction. You know you're bad at your job when even the NPCs don't care about you. Unlike the lower difficulties, Akumu introduced the Rubik clone at the start of Chapter 3, which, in combination with the sniper, made a direct path through the town an impossible plan of action. It also didn't help that the game decided to throw bombs into the mix, with hair-trigger safe spaces, I might add. The presence of the Rubik clone so early on forced me to take a long and winding path around the barn as well as the surrounding buildings, which is just a roundabout way of saying that I died a lot experimenting with the trial and error playstyle. Eventually, I had the bright idea to fire off a distraction shot, which gave me an opportunity to burn the Rubik clone and gave me access to the latter half of the town. After reaching the flaming house where the sniper was posted at, I was able to gain the shotgun and agony crossbow. With a bigger arsenal at my disposal, eliminating the remaining haunted was not a problem. All that was left was to open the exit gate and continue on, except that that exit gate was sealed shut with a chain. Luckily, I knew a guy who had exactly what I needed. Remember the sadist from Chapter 1? Well, now it was time for the first boss fight of the Evil Within. This is how that went.
Gotta take this guy down fast.
Huh? I have a shotgun. Let me prove it.
After conquering that monstrosity, I was able to annihilate the unrealistically thick chain with the sadist chainsaw and open the exit gate once and for all. With the irritating doctor in tow, Chapter 3 was complete. Even though the boss was confused by running away, I felt ready to take on whatever the game decided to throw at me next. Luckily, it didn't throw anything too mind-numbingly difficult during Chapter 4. Realistically, I could have made a beeline straight for the main encounter of Chapter 4, but I decided to explore the surrounding area for resources, in particular green gel and trap parts, so I could stock up on upgrades and ammunition. After taking down Marcelo's brother and various other haunted, I was then introduced to the first of many invisible haunted. It wasn't enough that these guys took me out in one hit, no. Seeing them made me way too privileged. Regardless, because I had done 3 playthroughs of The Evil Within before this one, I unironically saw it coming from a mile away. When that was taken care of, I was then transported to the Blood Room. This particular room in Chapter 4 served as the first true horde of the haunted in a confined space. I meant horde earlier as in there was a lot of them, but this was the first time in The Evil Within where multiple enemies were trying to attack Sebastian at the same time in close quarters. It wouldn't have been Akumu mode without the inclusion of a Rubik clone, so once again, my strategy shifted away from guns blazing and shifted towards taking down the clone as quickly as possible. That is, when I stopped doing dumb things, like walking into fire.
Use your common sense.
Eventually, I was able to stun and burn the Rubik clone, which gave me access to the back room. Apparently, I had also burned a whole group of the Haunted alongside the clone during my daring escape, which eliminated a large chunk of the horde. I mulched the remaining bastards with grenades and repurposed bomb traps, and before I knew it, the introductory horde was over with. All that was left was to escape Laura. Laura had one of the most off-putting introductions I've ever seen in a video game.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Not wanting to end up like the Haunted that flung open my escape door, I quickly booked it out of there. After one final lame attempt of capture from Ruvik, who then broke the stairwell I was standing on, sent me plummeting literally into Chapter 5. Having completed the first horde Chapter 4 threw at me, I felt pretty well prepared for the series of hordes coming my way. No amount of knowledge could protect me from PC stuttering, as I would very shortly discover. Chapter 5 began with a series of ominous hallways filled with the invisible Haunted introduced in the last chapter. While I knew how to deal with them, most often with a flashbolt sneak kill combo or a series of shotgun blasts, I could not deal with my PC. For whatever reason, my laptop couldn't process the area and had an aneurysm as I tried to take on the invisible Haunted. Even after I got out of those particular rooms, it only got worse, especially after I reunited with Joseph. This was not a happy reunion. Anyone who has played Akumu knows what a horrible waste of oxygen Joseph is. I was happier to see the stutter than to deal with Joseph. And don't worry, because I got exactly what I wished for. The stutter got so bad during the first mini-group encounter of Chapter 5 that I was genuinely concerned about whether or not I was going to be able to finish my Akumu playthrough. Strangely enough, as I progressed further into the chapter, the stutter decided it was done messing with me, and just in the nick of time too, as I was going to have to face the second horde of the Haunted. What made it such a pain was that I not only had to avoid getting hit myself, but I also had to babysit Joseph, who could die in 1 to 2 hits. If Joseph died, then I would as well. Let's just say that Joseph really showed whose side he was on during this encounter. I can't give him all the credit though, I had a couple of bad runs myself. After a solid half hour, we finally took down the seemingly endless horde. My reward for dealing with all that bullshit? A boss fight. Not just any boss fight, Laura's boss fight. It was basically the same fight as it would have been on lower difficulties on account of the fact that Laura insta-kills Sebastian the moment she catches him, so it negated a lot of the tension leading up to this point. That being said, Laura was much smarter and faster than before, and used her abilities much more often, making her incredibly unpredictable. Even still, I was able to utilize her violent flame allergy to my advantage and take her down. As Sebastian once said,
"Fire seems to work."
And with that demon conquered, another chapter was complete.
At this moment, he knew. He fucked up.
Chapter 7 was a dream compared to Chapter 6. For starters, it was a lot shorter than the previous chapter and contained way less, for lack of a better term, bullshit. I think the developers threw Sebastian a bone here after the perpetual hell that he just went through, because he survived the unprecedented difficulty spike and needed a cooldown. Much like me after the roller coaster of emotions I experienced while dealing with the aforementioned bit after bit of bullshit. Chapter 7 was the furthest thing from a freebie though. I was still on my toes as it introduced a new form of the Haunted known as Alter Egos, as well as, in my opinion, the coolest boss in the game, the Keeper. It was very obvious that the Keeper was the focal point of the entire chapter, as everything else served as a linear pathway towards this masterpiece of a boss fight. After taking down Safehead 5 times, 6 if you count the killing blow, I was now at the halfway point of the Evil Within.
Finally.
I was also completely out of ammo. The excitement from beating the Keeper had drained out of me as I realized that I was going to have to go spelunking in Chapter 8 with no firepower. My fears were completely unfounded. I died once during Chapter 8, and it was because I did not distance myself from an alter ego that had its alien pet tentacle thing out and ready to attack. Other than that, I was able to find just enough ammo to get by, and dropped one very lucky match. I cleared the remaining chunk of the cave with no issue. All that was left was a sprint to the safe room, and Chapter 8 was done. From this point on, the Haunted now carried guns, because everything the Evil Within had thrown at me until now wasn't challenging enough. Picking up immediately after Chapter 8, Chapter 9 brought me to the Victoriano estate. This was the only point in my playthrough where I spammed save, because I knew I was going to die. A lot. In order to open a blocked door, I had to solve 3 brain puzzles hidden throughout the manor, while a bunch of Haunted swarmed the various rooms I needed to explore, paired nicely with a bunch of traps, all topped off with Ruvik's random house visits where he would insta-kill me on sight. The only way to avoid him was to hide and wait for him to disappear, making this section drag on much longer than it needed to. Regardless, I made it through, and was then transported into a boss fight against Aunt Ruvik. After an extended chase sequence and a mini-horde encounter within the burning barn, I was sent back to the hallway leading to the basement of the Victoriano Manor, and Chapter 9 came to a close. Chapter 10 was a lot. The first section threw me into Jigsaw's Industrial Funland, where I got to play a game. Duck or Decapitation? Naturally, I chose the first option. That didn't stop the Evil Within from sending in legions of the Haunted to give me a bad time, and make ducking difficult, most of them gun-toters, I might add. After that, I had to navigate a series of rooms infested with more Haunted, and a Ruvik clone for good measure. I then had to backtrack through the various rooms with not only even more Haunted, but a new enemy type as well, an enemy type known as Trauma. They're big, fast, and hit like a truck. It also didn't help that they were bullet sponges. My solution? The next section rekindled my old flame with Laura from way back when in Chapter 5. God, was she in high spirits. Not only did she utilize her abilities way more often, she also had me running around. It didn't help that I had to light her up on the go, literally, with a blink and you miss it flame pipe scattered throughout her arena. I died multiple times throughout this fight, whether it be Laura's tight grasp, bear traps, or fire. Something always took me out. I actually had to stop in between attempts because I was getting so frustrated. Then I remembered, there was a cheeky way to cheese the boss without any actual effort. If I shot the bottom of any one of the flame pipes with a harpoon bolt, that pipe would endlessly spew fire, which would continuously damage Laura until she died. The only difficult part was baiting her towards any one of the pipes. After 10 minutes of trial and error, I finally burned her down and celebrated her defeat. My celebration was incredibly short-lived though, as my own stupidity screwed everything up.
Bruh.
Not my finest moment, but at least I got the satisfaction of killing Laura twice. My reward for taking Laura down a total of 3 times? Another boss fight. For the 6th encounter of the game, I had to take on the Amalgam Alpha, otherwise known as the thing I ran away from in Chapter 8. Unlike Laura, this fight didn't require any technical skill. I just ran around the arena and let it eat up as much ammo as it could take. With that hulking monstrosity put down, Chapter 10 was as well.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Chapter 11 was the only truly painful section after the perpetual torment that was Chapter 6. Anyway, Chapters 12 and 13 were designed to be cooldowns after, well, the shitstorm that was the previous chapter. Chapter 12 only required 2 things, a less than pleasant encounter with a Spider-Bane hybrid named Heresy, and a quick sprint across an abandoned highway. Spider-Bane was not fun, to say the least, but I at least got the satisfaction of squashing the giant arachnid. As for the highway sprint, the game decided to throw in a machine gun for my troubles, and that went about as well as you might expect. At some point, I was done messing around and ran right past the turret and straight back to the bus. I made sure to hit every single haunted in my way before the end of the chapter. Chapter 13 was a shift back to stealth all the way back from the beginning of the game, and, well, using the Magnum made it much less stealthy. I was trying too hard to conserve ammo, and by the time I said fuck it, I was through the hotel's halls and into the kitchen from hell in no time. Also, the Keeper returned because he just didn't want to stay dead 6 times over. Adding 2 more Keeper kills to my counter, I made it out of the hotel and into a kid's playground, where everything went to chaos, and I fell through the floor, literally into Chapter 14. I was dreading the next chapter for a particular reason, but I pressed onward anyway, because I was so close to finally getting You Asked For It. Chapter 14 opened in an abandoned train station. I didn't know what to make of this chapter until a Ruvik clone snuck up behind me and scared the crap out of me. Luckily, I acted calmly and rationally to deal with it. As for the train station, it was filled with haunted. I don't know why I was still trying to play stealthy this late in the game. I guess Chapter 13 reverted my playstyle similar to how it was back at the beginning of the game. When that ultimately didn't work, I went guns blazing, and Lord and behold, it actually worked. Now I had to deal with a bunch of alter egos, and because that wasn't enough, I also had to deal with more trauma, which came back with a vengeance. After an incredibly unpleasant close encounter with both enemy types, because blowing either up was not going to work this time, I gunned down the alter egos and stunned the trauma. I almost had to redo the entire section thanks to one very eager alter ego, but the game decided that I should survive long enough only for the boss to kick my ass again, and again, and again. Meet Quell, the last true challenge of the Akumu experience. Fast, sneaky, though not very well hidden, far-reaching, and bullshit mini-enemy spam, Quell was by and large the worst I've faced in the Evil Within since Chapter 11. I thought the Magnum would obliterate his health, but in order for it to have effect I actually had to hit my target, which was much easier said than done. But like every other main monstrosity that I had to face, Quell 2 finally went down, and I happily powered the generator, knowing nothing else could possibly stand in my way. That is, until I entered the final horde of the Haunted in Chapter 15. Because that wasn't enough, the Keeper made a double appearance. Luckily, I was an ammo storage hound during the latter half of the game, and it kinda made one of the cooler encounters trivial. After Ruvik's take on Ultimate Beastmaster, it was now time to take Ruvik head-on. With turrets, explosives, and one well-timed shot to the dome, Ruvik was put down for good.
Hooray!
So, the question you've probably been asking yourself throughout this entire video is, how many deaths did it take? I died a whopping 380 times over the course of my 21-hour playthrough. Was it worth it? At this point in time, yes. Would I recommend this mode to anyone else? Also yes. Just expect pain and a lot of death. Try to keep an open mind and don't approach all situations with guns blazing. Above all else, have fun. The Evil Within is a game that revels in its insanity, and that's what made this challenge so much fun to take on. Occasionally torturous, but ultimately a really good time. With that, I'm Raging Bull 2008, and thank you so much for watching my first video. See ya!